Welcome to Proptech Paradox. I'm Zeenish, and today I'm joined by Mark Rogers, the head of Net Zero Carbon Cost Management at Turner and Townsend. Mark has been at the forefront of carbon measurement and net zero strategies in the built environment. Mark, it's great to have you on the show.
Thank you very much, Zeenish. I'm delighted to be here.
So let's start with something right at the heart of the industry today. That's carbon. Are you seeing greater interest in carbon measurement in 2025? I mean, is the momentum still growing, or how is that actually playing out across the sector?
Yes, we are seeing, or I am seeing a significant increase in carbon assessment and carbon measurement. If I give you an example, we launched our carbon calculator back in 2022. And so that's 3 years from now. So over the last 3 years, we've probably seen the biggest increase and the biggest ask from clients over the last 6 months. And I think that's really, really positive. I'm really encouraged that that's happening a lot more. But what I do see is I think different clients are on a kind of a different journey. They're at different places in their understanding of what they're asking for and what they use carbon assessments for. So I think there's still that little bit of sort of education piece, I guess, from the whole of the industry to really sort of drive forward the purpose and the benefit of undertaking carbon assessments at the beginning of projects and what they can do to deliver the best net zero outcomes for clients at the best value. Because I think over the last few years, we've seen so much cost pressure within the industry here in the UK. We've had energy prices and all sorts of other sort of cost of living issues that have increased construction costs. And obviously on the other side of the fence, the funding costs have increased as well. So that's put a lot of pressure on client budgets. So obviously we're trying to build more for less. So it's really important to get the messaging right to clients and to industry that lower carbon design doesn't have to come at a higher cost. And we're really trying to work hard to get that message out there that if we're looking at the dual currencies of construction together, you can deliver both your cost and carbon outcomes for your targets.
Well, that tension you're describing between pushing forward on carbon goals and managing cost, I mean, it's something we hear a lot about. So let me ask, how can we actually drive more investment in carbon reduction while clients are still wrestling with these budget challenges, you can say?
Yeah, well, I think the first step is really to treat carbon as the fourth dimension alongside cost, time, quality, isn't it? So having that really part and integrated into the client brief, so it's really clear what the client is trying to achieve from the outset of the project. Then I think that the important part is to start treating the net zero goals as part of the design process and measuring carbon as early as possible within the design. So rather than leaving it too late when the design is developed and then it's going to cost time and money to go back and amend things, it's really integrating that, from REBA 1 if you can, or at least REBA 2, so that you've got a real clear understanding of the performance, the carbon performance of the building at that stage. And that really just dramatically improves the prospect of achieving both the cost and carbon outcomes for the project if you can do it at that stage of the project. And I think in parallel with that, we also need to start looking at capital and whole life costs a lot more closely together. Because the capital costs obviously are very important for clients and they're very focused on that. But if they're maintaining the asset for a long period of time, they also need to understand the operational cost of what they're going to build. And then I think in parallel with that, that's looking at the upfront and the operational carbon to try and look at the best solution for the 30, 40, 50, 60 years of the asset. So not just looking at a point in time, but over the whole life. And I think that new way of thinking needs to be led or should be led by government. It should be something that is mandated. And I think that's why industry is calling for carbon to be measured. Maybe at the beginning it is embodied carbon, but it's a first step, I think, of that journey to make sure we're measuring something tangible and looking to drive improvements from that point in time.
Well, that long-term perspective makes so much sense, especially when we think about buildings as assets that will be around for decades. But let me ask you this, will big businesses help lead this shift? After all, many of them have ambitions of like net zero goals, but do you see them using tools like carbon measurement to help get there?
No, absolutely. I think they will, and they are at the moment. I mean, we do see many of the blue chip commercial developers that we work with around the UK very focused on their net zero ambitions. They're looking at carbon properly. They're treating it as that fourth dimension, and they're integrating it into the project and starting really early in the design stage to think about how they're going to achieve what their targets or their ambitions are. So I think that's fantastic, and they're making the right decisions based on understanding the performance of the building from the long term. We've got an example of a project at the moment. I won't say the name of the client, but they've I think reused something like 3/4 of the structural steel from another building into a new building, which has reduced the embodied carbon by 90%. So taking that sort of strategic view across all the assets that they own has been fantastic. So they've been able to reuse and repurpose what they've already got and not to increase the embodied carbon within a new building. So I think businesses, and developers who take that approach will help to drive this forward.
So with that kind of momentum in parts of the private sector, why is there still a need for a government mandate, and how quickly should we move towards it?
It's a good question. I think a lot of people are asking for the mandate, and obviously the Part Z has been drafted out and it's been around for a number of years here in the UK in its draft form. But it is, it is the first step of a journey, isn't it? And I think it's one that we all need to go on as an industry. I think it would be great if it was mandated. It will provide us focus on what is required to lower carbon emissions and to drive. I think the important thing is driving a consistent approach in how we measure it. Obviously, using the RICS professional standard is a great part of doing that and plays a really important role. But it also then creates that little bit of sort of competitive tension, doesn't it? Because if one client is publishing, reporting and saying that our embodied carbon is this value, and then there's competition between other clients to go, well, we've actually developed something for a better carbon outcome. I think that helps. So being able to have it mandated will sort of help with that thought process, really, about how to drive improvement. I think the key thing is driving those behaviours. When a project is delivered at a certain value historically, how do we make sure we improve on that? It's like with benchmarking with cost. So if you're looking at what you did before, it's like, how do we try and improve that? So the only way to know if you've improved is to measure it in the first place. So I think it is really important that we do it. And I think as for timings, we've got to be doing it now. We've got, the UK has a 2050 net zero carbon target, and a lot of public sector clients have got 2030, and private sector clients have got 2030 net zero targets. So we've been talking about this for 5, 6, 7 years, and it hasn't happened. So we need to be doing it now, because this 1.5 degrees climate change is happening, and we have to make steps and do something to help achieve that, or to limit it to that.
Yeah, well, that's a powerful message and a critical one. So Mark, thank you for joining us today and sharing your insights. It's clear that we are at a turning point, and your perspective really helps bring clarity to what we need to do next. That wraps up this episode of Proptech Power Talks. Until next time.